Hi guys. Today we are going to talk about Sparta. And if you are familiar with the meme, this is Sparta, or maybe you know your older siblings watching the movie 300, well, Sparta is kind of about that. And we're going to reference different parts of the movie 300. We're also going to reference different parts of Wonder Woman, and we're going to, this is going to be a fun study site to talk about. But today our main focus is just what did the men do, what did the women do, and then what did the children do, and what did the slaves do. So that's our main focus, is those four people groups. You're going to need this PowerPoint, and we're going to learn some facts about Sparta. We're going to find out where it's at, and then we're going to go through those roles real in depth, okay? And there's lots of questions to answer throughout the PowerPoint on individual slides, and so feel free to pause this video and answer those questions, and that's how you're gonna get your points for today. So your learning target is I can examine the daily lives of ancient Spartans to discover their culture influence, the culture influence they had on the world. And today we're just mainly looking at the roles of each of those citizens, okay? We're going to get further into this week, the government, and we're going to look really in depth on the military, and just we're going to get really into Sparta. All right, this is a really fun city-state to talk about. We're going to identify the patron goddess of Sparta. We're going to examine the roles of men, women, children, and the Helots, and you'll find out what Helots means. And then we're going to compare and contrast the rights and responsibilities between Sparta men and Sparta women. All right. As always, office hours information posted right there. My email address is linked, Zoom information, live stream. I am thinking of doing a live lesson again this week. It will probably be more like, let me look in my handy dandy planner. Y'all are familiar with this. It might be Thursday again, okay? So Tuesday, I will definitely have way more information to give you about that so that you guys can come prepared, okay? That's kind of what I'm thinking. All right, so moving to the next slide, here's where you're gonna find today's video lesson. So where is Sparta located at? Okay, well, Sparta is located in the southeastern part of Greece. Literally, it's right here. Okay, that is Sparta. Athens, we talked about Athens the past, last week and the week before. And before that, like the last 3 weeks, we talked about Athens, the Olympics. We talked about the philosophers, we talked about the literature, we talked about the buildings. Like that's all Athens. And so Athens is over here. Sparta is over here. And they do worship the same gods. That's the same. But their government's going to be different. We'll talk about that tomorrow. And their big thing is military. Okay, Athens up here, it's all culture. Sparta is military and kicking some butt. And as we'll find out getting into next week, these two will come head to head. Can't have two powerful cities coexisting. So that's why we're kind of talking about each of them individually, because that way you guys can kind of see how they are going to clash big time. They are a city-state, okay? This whole light brown, that's Greece. These are different city-states. You got Crete, the island of Crete down here. You got the island of Rhodes. You have Troy up here. You have Athens. You have Sparta. And there's tons of other city-states on here. I just didn't want to put them all in there because I didn't want to confuse you guys. So just note that these aren't like the only 4 city-states that Greece has. They have tons. In fact, all these teeny little islands have people living on them. And there's tons of city-states throughout the whole area, okay? And remember, a city-state is a region that has its own government system, and they can go to war with each other. So Athens is a democracy. That's different than what Sparta will be. Athens' democracy does not control what Sparta does. Sparta's government controls Sparta. Athens can go to war with Troy. Troy and Athens are part of Greece, but they can go to war with each other, okay? So here are some fun Sparta city facts, okay? The patron gods of Sparta are Apollo and Artemis Orthia. Apollo, remember, he's the god of archery, music, dance, truth and prophecy, healing and disease, the sun and light and poetry, a lot of stuff, okay? Artemis or Thea, she's kind of a combination of two gods. Artemis is one, and then the Orthia, that was a goddess that the Spartans kind of created, and then as they were going to kind of merge the two into one. And she's the goddess of nature and hunting, as well as fertility, childbirth, and then just farming, vegetation. Sparta is very much known for their military. That's the big thing that they're known for. And we'll talk more about like exactly what military tactics and armor and all that stuff on Wednesday. So I'm going to move this down here just a little bit. But the roles of Spartan men. Because Sparta is known for their military, it's a requirement that all male citizens are part of the military culture in some way, shape, or form. So for example, boys will go to a military boarding school starting at the age of 7. They will actually leave their homes and they will go to a school where they will learn how to fight. And we'll talk more about boys in that role when we get there. They will remain at that school to the age of 20. When they hit 20, they become a full-fledged Spartan soldier. And then that is where they put into male dorms. And they basically live in a military camp till they reach 60. They are going to continue to fight the entire time. They may die. It is a chance that the Spartan government takes. Once they reach the age of 60, then they can go and participate in the government. And we'll talk more about what government participation looks like in terms of like a government elder, okay? But during their time of being a soldier, they are going to live in dorms, kind of like a college style or maybe a fraternity house, an all-guy housing area. There's no women in sight, okay? The only time they ever get to really meet with their wives is when they sneak out at night. And the only reason why a Spartan male would ever meet up with his wife is to procreate. That's it. There's no romantic involvement in really part of their relationship. Spartan citizens know that their job is to serve Sparta. And how do you serve Sparta? You produce little Spartans. That's it. You're actually going to be arranged marriage, so you don't even really get to pick out your husband or wife. It's already picked for you by the government based off of what you're good at, based off of what your spouse is good at, and then together the hope is that your baby will have the best of both your qualities. And we'll talk more about what that means in a moment. The big thing that I want to point out is that Spartan men actually respected their women, which we don't see in other cultures that we've talked about. In Athens, we didn't see that level of respect. In Sparta, we do. Men know that if they were caught assaulting their wife, she could attack them, whether with a knife and actually cut them, or she could publicly humiliate that man and he would be publicly punished for taking advantage of his wife. And so there was a lot of respect that women had from their Spartan men counterparts, which we don't see really in other parts of the world. Men understood that women had a greater role than just bearing children, and they really allowed women to take on those unique roles, which we'll talk about on the next slide. But basically the roles of men is to, one, you're going to learn how to read and write. You do get to learn how to do that at your school, but you're going to learn to fight. And you're going to be the best of the best. You have to, or like you're going to die. And then you'll fight till you're 60. And then you get to serve in the government. And this isn't necessarily like true elected positions like we saw in Athens with democracy, and we'll talk more tomorrow what that looks like. But if you were able to survive the battles, the harsh battles, and the constant going to war, and you got to the age of 60, then you could then serve in the government. And that was your life. That was literally all you did. This video clip right here, some of you are familiar with that meme of This is Sparta. This video clip is from that part of the movie, that This is Sparta. And the thing that I want to really have you guys understand is the character right here. This is Leonidas. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about Leonidas later next week. Um, and he actually he's intercounting a Persian, okay? And he will actually turn back and look at his wife, who is behind him in the screenshot, for permission to literally kick him. But that act of turning back and looking at the female, that there shows the level of respect that men had for Spartan women. And that was actually really common. If you were with your husband and maybe it was at your wedding ceremony or whatever the case may be, and your husband and another guy were getting into a fight, like a bar fight, it was very common before they engage in that to look back at their females for approval to engage in that situation, because men understood that women had a certain wisdom that men maybe didn't currently hold when they're in the heat of anger. And as an outside female, they really relied on the wives to be like, yeah, you could fight this guy and easily beat him, or like, no, you're not gonna win, you're being stupid, you need to just not do that. So that's what that video clip there shows. So I highly encourage you guys to click on that video, and you can then see where the "This is Sparta" line comes from in the movie. I will say though, that movie is rated R, so like, no, don't watch it. But we'll see approved parts from that movie throughout our lesson of Sparta. Okay. But the question I want you to answer right here is, how are Spartan men different than men in America today? So what are some things that make those two gender roles different in Sparta and then in America? So that's what you're going to type in this green box here. So go ahead and pause the video now and answer that question. So moving on to Spartan women, okay? Spartan women were basically Amazons from Wonder Woman, all right? This is a cast of different background actors, but if you see what they're wearing, the type of military, the type of strength that they have in their arms especially, like these were not like women who sat around and goal was to look beautiful. Like these were women who were fit, they were strong, they knew how to defend themselves, they knew how to fight, which is really rare, especially in this time of the world where women don't have any rights or responsibilities in much of the world. And here in Sparta is raising up their women in equality status. So I put the picture of the Wonder Woman extra here just to give you guys an idea of what some of these Spartan women would have worn as they were training in their combat fighting. But then they would have worn like those traditional like cloth draped robies things on their day-to-day life. But women actually had more freedoms and rights in Sparta than in any other city-state in Greece, and actually in much of the known world at that time. So more freedoms than Egyptian women had, more freedoms than Persian women had. Depending on who was ruling in China, more freedoms than they had. You know, so if you think of all the different civilizations that we have talked about, Spartan women are going to have a lot more freedoms than some of those other civilizations, which is awesome for Sparta. Here's why they have so much freedom, okay? If all of your men between the ages of 7 to 60 are gone, either out of boarding school or they are off fighting, who is left to protect your home? Like, think about it. If you are a female and you're living in Sparta, you got married at the age of 18 to 20, okay? Today we say like that's way too young, but like compared to like some cultures back then, like Persia, where women were getting married at 13, 14, that's real mature, okay? There's even people like I knew in high school who got married at age 19 and 20, like people I knew today do that today. So typically the idea of thinking is like by the time you hit 18, you are mentally mature to be married and to make rational decisions as a married person. So you got married and your husband was home for the ceremony. He had to be there. He was there that night. Then he left the next day to go back to the male dorm to fight. You are now on your own. Kind of a scary thought. You have to protect this house. You have to feed yourself. Like, yes, your husband's bringing in some money, but like it takes a while for the money to get to you. And you've got to figure out like how to save the money, how to do things like taxes and pay those taxes, because your man's off fighting, like he's not doing that. So it fell to the women to literally take on more masculine roles. I hate using that, but masculine roles like tax payment, like understanding crop rotation and when to plant crops and harvest crops, understanding how to protect one's house, literally physically protecting it. Like if you had an outside invader come and try to rob your house, or someone tried to rob you, like it was the women who were trained and carried knives literally hidden in their robes, hidden in them, to protect themselves and any young children under the age of 7 that they had with them. Like that was the women's job. They received a formal education. They knew how to read and write, which is crazy because many women even today in parts of the world don't know how to read and write. They were also involved in very athletic sports. It was thought that if you were a strong female, you would produce strong Spartans. And we want strong Spartans to be strong soldiers so we can fight. Like that's the whole idea. Everyone's goal is to be a strong Spartan to serve Sparta. And how do women serve Sparta? They make strong Spartans. How do you make strong Spartans? You yourself need to be strong. And obviously Miss Gore is not a good example of what a Spartan woman would look like. But they would be fit. I would not want to meet one in a dark alley at night and make them mad. Like I think that they could very easily kick my butt, and they totally would do it in a heartbeat. But Spartan women could own property and they could manage the property because their men were gone. So if the man in battle died, it wasn't like the woman was, tough out of luck and she had to leave her house and she had nowhere to go. Like she owned that house. She owned the land that couldn't be taken away from her for the sole reason because her husband could possibly die. And they wanted to protect that woman's house so that she wasn't left alone. And so they understood that. Women were basically their own master. No one could really tell them what to do. If their husband was mistreating them, they could divorce their husband. That's amazing to think about, that in like the 500s BCs, we had women who were able to divorce husbands. And in America, it took till like, trying to think of a decade where it was normal for divorce to occur. Maybe 90s, maybe more like today, maybe. I mean, there was divorce that happened in like the 1800s, but that was always the men divorcing the women, not the other way around. So really like women divorcing men, and for it to be like not shamed upon, if that makes sense. Like I would argue maybe the 80s and 90s that was starting to turn around, where it was like, oh, you divorced your husband because he cheated on you? Wow. Like, good for you to get out of a situation like that. Or you divorced your husband because he was abusing you? Like, good for you to get out of a situation like that. So it's a very new, accepted stance that women have here in America. But back then, women could divorce their husband if they felt like their husband was not being a good Spartan man, wasn't coming home enough to help with the procreation, or when he turned 60, if he lived to be 60 and then he started abusing her, like she could divorce him. She had that right. And when she divorced him, she didn't lose her house. So good things going for Sparta there and their female rights. So what I want you to do now is, how are Spartan women similar to women living in America today? What rights do Spartan women have that us American women, or American women in general, if you are a male, have that are similar? So you're going to answer that in the green box here. Okay, let's talk about Spartan boys. So the government basically owned the children more than their parents did. And what I mean by that is like, if like basically your parents today, they parent you, they tell you what to do, they tell you how they want things done, they tell you they teach you how to be a good citizen. They teach you manners. They teach you how to dress. They teach you basically how to be a human being. Yes, school teaches you a lot of those things too, but we learn a lot of things from our parents back home, and especially how to interact with other people. We watch our parents and interact. The government, because they take away the boys at age 7, they technically own the children longer than what parents will. And so if you think about from age 7 to 20, and that is 17 years. Wait, that's not right. Hold on. Let me do some math. Hold on. 13, okay? That's 13 years of a boy's life that they're living at the government-owned military training school versus the 7 years they spent with their mom. And I want to say mom because remember, dads are only there to create the children, be there at the birth, to name the children, gone. So there was a huge more time spent in the government military house than there is at your mom's house. And if you're a boy, your only job is to be a Spartan soldier, a strong Spartan. That's your only job. You don't get to be a poet. You don't get to be a philosopher. You don't get to be a craftsman. You don't get to be an actor like in Athens, we talked about last week. You don't get those different choices. Your choice is to fight. And so you will literally see Spartan boys go hand-to-hand combat with men teaching them how to fight. They are going to learn how to read and write and all the other things school would teach you, okay? But the big thing was fight, and it was a harsh school. This wasn't like a preppy private boarding school or Hogwarts where, we want to go to Hogwarts. No, I would not want to go to a Spartan school, and it's actually called the Agora. Agora is spelled A-G-O-R-A. Okay? I would not want to go there if I was a boy, all right? You are talking about it was encouraged for boys to physically fight each other. Here at Walnut, we don't like fighting. Fighting's not good. If we were in Agora, that was encouraged. And if you lost the fight, you were punished because you're not a strong Spartan. If you lose the fight, you're not a strong Spartan. So fighting was highly encouraged. Physical beatings, also encouraged. You were given hardly any clothing to endure, especially if you were up in the mountains parts of Greece and it was a little chilly. You weren't given proper warm clothing so that your body adapted to the environment so that when you went off to go fight somewhere, maybe in a cold climate, your body was used to it. You were also forced starvation. They purposely did not give these boys enough food so that they were forced to think of creative ways to steal. Stealing was encouraged, and if you were caught stealing, you weren't punished because you stole. You were punished because you were caught and you weren't creative enough with how you stole. So extreme backwards thinking in terms of right and wrong than what we're used to. Here at Walnut and in America, you steal, you're punished for stealing. There, you stole and you got away with it. That is a strong Spartan. Okay? I should do hashtag strong Spartan, all right? So that is very unique in terms of a boy's education and upbringing. But like I said, military school, you're there from 7 to 20. When you hit 20, you're in full-fledged military till you are 60 if you make it, all right? Which not many men made it. I will say that. But that's the life of the boys, all right? It's life of the boys. Girls. Okay, girls are a little different. Check out some of these meaty thighs on some of these women, all right? Whew. Girls are also going to be removed from the home at age 7 and sent to a school, but they get to it's during the day. So they go to school at daytime and then they get to come back and be with their mom at night. So it's not exactly the same, but it's similar. There's a school that they go to. When they're at the school, they're going to learn wrestling, they're going to learn gymnastics, they're going to be taught to fight so that they can protect themselves. And they're also going to become a strong Spartan. Because remember, if you are a strong Spartan, you will produce stronger Spartans. So if you are a fit female with good birthing hips and strong muscles, you're going to be able to produce many amazing Spartan children. And that's what the government wants. Why are we so focused on producing lots of Spartan children? Because remember, we're in constant battles with other city-states, constantly. And when we're doing these battles, men die. And we got to have a constant flow of newcomers coming in to replace the ones that are dying. How do you get that constant flow? You have women constantly produce, and you want these women to constantly produce the best strong Spartans. So they must be a strong Spartan themselves. I don't know if Miss Score could qualify as a strong Spartan. I'm not sure. I'm not athletic at all. So I probably will not qualify. And we'll talk about what happens to those children who do not qualify. Okay? So both males and females, when they reach the age of like 18, 20, they have to pass a citizen test. And this test will determine like if they can be a true Spartan or not. And if they don't pass the test, they're kind of sent away. So you're kind of outcasted and you go somewhere else. Maybe you go to Athens and now you're a foreigner of Athens, okay? But at that time, that's when they are married and they're emotionally mature to marry at that time. So that also helps like women being closer age to their husband, because in other cultures at this time period, you had like a husband who was like 35 marrying like a 14-year-old girl. A little odd for today, but like normal for back then. So these women, even though like 18 to 20, that's a young age for a female to get married here in America, like for Greece, that's pretty old. Like if you got married at age 20 in Athens, that was like the age that these Athenian grandmothers would be like, your eggs are dying. You're not going to be able to produce a whole lot of children. Like, you getting up there in age. Your eggs are dying. Your eggs don't not die at age 20. Okay? Like, just so we're clear, that's scientifically untrue. But it would be a shock to other Greek city-states if they found a female getting married at age 20. Sparta, that's the right age to get married because you're emotionally ready for the struggles that come with marriage. Also, you're at the peak of like your athletic capability and the peak of like your body, so you can then produce strong Spartans for the Spartan government. But regardless of the gender, okay, if you produced a child that maybe wasn't a perfect child according to the Spartan government elders, those men above 60, who were at the birth of the child, okay, they were there, they will inspect the baby. And let's say maybe they notice that the baby isn't responding to loud noises with crying, so the hearing's off. Or they notice that if they're dangling like a red ball, the baby's eyes aren't moving to that. It might be blind a little. Or maybe they notice that the baby was born without limbs, without arms or legs. Or there's a certain organ that's born more on the outside and not on the inside. There's a whole bunch of different things that can happen to babies, or things that people can just be born with, that in today's world we have technology and ways to help those people out as they get older, and we have ways to help them live a wonderful life. Back then in Greece, that technology didn't exist. And so if these elders found something that they deemed wasn't going to be a strong Spartan, they would either put the baby on a mountain and basically leave it to die, either through natural causes. Excuse my dog barking, by the way. Through natural causes, or by another animal, or they would just kill the baby right then and there. And it's very harsh to think about that. It's a very tough subject. Some people call it a little bit of selective breeding, in terms of like you're only like pairing strong people with other strong people, or maybe only blondes with blondes, so you produce a blonde child. But it's also, the proper term is called eugenics. And so eugenics is that act of taking a baby who maybe has some sort of I don't want to use the word complication, but just something that makes the baby's life a little bit different, a little bit unique in terms of like how is the baby going to function day to day? How do we support this baby? We have to change the way we do our life to support this baby. They may take that baby and instead of choosing to support it in a different, unique way and help it live, they may choose to kill that baby instead. So eugenics is a very difficult topic, but Sparta is not the only culture that's going to practice eugenics. Hitler is also going to practice it during World War II a lot, and we're going to see other countries do that as well. And there's some speculation that even some countries today practice eugenics. So eugenics is something that you'll learn more about in like high school and college, but that's just what that word is called, okay? So that's why I wanted to put it in there because that's a proper term for it, and it's a little easier to say than killing babies who have a unique future in terms of how they're going to live their life. So, on that note, how is a Spartan childhood similar or different than your childhood today? So, what are some things that Spartan kids do that you do? What are some things Spartan kids do that you don't do? That's what I want you to kind of put in this box here. The last group that we're going to talk about is Helots. And the Helots are basically slaves, okay? Because the men are away fighting, the women are not going to be left to do the farming. Like, no, Spartan women, they're too much above everything else because they are like the perfect Spartan, strong Spartan, okay? So they're going to have Helots, and Helots are slaves. And these are people that the Spartans either captured in their many battles with other city-states, and these Helots are forced to farm and do other tasks to keep the country moving. It could be like tradesmen, or it could be, making cloths, okay? Whatever the case may be, but these were slaves, and these slaves were mistreated. A lot of times they were made fun of by Spartans. Sometimes Helots were forced to get extremely drunk, and then they were forced to sing and dance just for other Spartan people to make fun of them. And this happened all the time. There were beatings of Helots in the streets. It wasn't good to be a Helot, all right? Like, it's not good to be a slave. And just so we're all clear, like, these slaves weren't like from Africa. These slaves could be other Greeks from other Greek city-states. So like Troy, okay? Or those islands. They could have taken some of the people from the island. Or they very simply could have made those people in the island stay on that island and be Helots in their own homeland and forced to make food for Sparta far away of the country. And they're like, the Spartan military is there and they're like beating on these people, okay? It'd be like, let's say Lincoln forced all of Grand Island to people living in Grand Island to make the food and be slaves to people of Lincoln, but you're still living in your house in Grand Island. It's not the greatest situation. There was a lot of Helots and slaves living in Sparta. We don't really know the exact number total, but one of the historians at the time period, Herodotus, he claims that there were about 7 Helots for every Spartan household. So that's a lot of slaves for like one man and one woman, like 7 to 2. That odds are not in the favor. You could easily have a revolt, but because your Spartan husband is the very strong Spartan, chances of a revolt are not going to happen. And because the females are also strong Spartans, they can protect themselves as well. So there were some revolts, but they rarely were very successful because the Spartan military and their citizens in general were so well trained that they could easily put it down. Like, go see the opening battle scene of Wonder Woman. Okay. So before you move on to the final task, which is a sorting activity to compare and contrast women and men in Sparta, go ahead and watch this video. This video does a good review of basically everything that I talked about in terms of the roles of men and women. So watch this video, okay? It does a really, really great job. So on this task, you're going to simply just drag each of these boxes into the correct gender. So there's 4 for men and there's 4 for women, okay? And you can go back through the PowerPoint to kind of help you out. But in terms of what we got in the boxes, we have owned property, an active soldier till the age of 60, learned how to protect themselves from a possible home invasion, had to leave home at 7 to train to fight. That word's misspelled. I'll fix that. Encouraged to steal, could file for a divorce. Dying in battle was an honor, the only way to get a gravestone. That one you need to watch the video for to find out what gender that belongs in. And then learn to read and write, something that was rare for this gender, okay? So when you're done, make sure you turn this PowerPoint in and have a fabulous Monday.